Hello, everybody. This is Todd Ballinger with Kendall Todd, and today we're going to do a case study on Borrow Smart, Repay Smart with a financial advisor guest, Jeff Webb from Mountain Financial. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing well, Todd. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for spending some time. I had a chance to meet you at a conference recently, and you shared with me some really exciting things that you were doing with the software. I thought I'd kind of start out and maybe give us a quick background check. You started out as a lender, and you've crossed the balance sheet now, right? And you're focusing on the asset side of the balance sheet.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. About 5-6 years ago.
Good. So you've spent 5 or 6 years in the financial advising space, and you don't do lending anymore. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Awesome. Okay. So you've seen both sides of the balance sheet. I see your company, Mountain Financial, build wealth strategically. So in a typical day, you're working with clients that you generate, and I understand you're also working with a lot of clients that are referred to you from local lending professionals. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
And you also refer business to lending professionals, right?
Yep.
Because you don't do the loans anymore. Well, tell me, on a typical day, you shared with me a couple of key strategies that you were using, and they were very simple strategies. You know, it was like a 30 to 15, where you're working with clients who have a 30 that were thinking about transitioning to a 15, and you talked to them about that. And you also have clients with a 15-year mortgage that are maybe looking to, or you're helping them move back into a 30 to free up cash flow. I know we're going to go through a case study. Why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of your 30 to 15 and 15 to 30 strategies, how you work with clients as a whole, and then we'll go into a case study.
Sounds good, Todd. Yeah, in general, those are two prime examples of the types of situations that we're dealing with, and that's what we want to illustrate to a prospect or a client in terms of what is the right decision to make. If I have a 30-year fixed mortgage, should I be tempted by the lower rate of a 20-year or a 15-year term? And is that decision right for me over the amount of time that I'm going to spend in my home? Another thing along with that is making a prepayment to the bank every month with my available cash flow the right thing to do? And then on the flip side, like you said, we do get a lot of clients who are already in that 15-year mortgage position. We're maybe shopping for a lower rate and a refinance, and come to find out that they might not be in the best position by being in a 15-year mortgage.
So they have too much of their monthly wealth going and committed to the house per se, and you might help them look at the 30 as a way to reposition some of that cash flow into other, emergency funds, savings, things like that.
Yeah, increased money supply, liquidity.
Great. Yeah, I know you focus a lot on just the importance of creating some liquidity for your client. Why don't you take us through an example here of a client that you're working with? I know you changed the name, but everything else is the same. And just talk through how you might explain this to a client, and then we can look at some of the other ways that you're using the tool.
Sure. I'll just give you a little bit of a recap. This client came to us from a referral partner, and they were shopping for a lower rate. They are currently in a 30-year fixed mortgage, and you can see that here at 5.5%. So when they did start to look for that next step or that refinance, because market rates are so low, they were tempted by the 20-year fixed mortgage because they were able to get that at 4 1/8 versus the 30-year fixed at 4.5. So they just wondered. Their question is what is the right decision? At the surface, based on their knowledge of it's all about just rate and payment, the 20-year fixed seemed to be the best option for them. That tells me as a financial advisor a couple of things. One, they need some education. Two, they have available cash flow that they might be able to save, which means more money under management for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, and you can see here, I put into the objectives that their decision was to find out if the 20-year fix is the best decision for the long haul. One other note with this client is they were deciding to stay in that home for at least 15 years while their kids were growing up. So they were going to be there for a while.
Right.
So if we go over here to the Borrow tab, I ran both scenarios up against their current mortgage with Borrow Smart, Repay Smart. You'll see here in the green section that I ran the 20-year fixed proposal at the 4.125% percentage rate, note rate, and I also ran a 30-year fixed refinance to a new 30-year fixed, starting the term over, paying the closing costs at 4.5%. So, a couple of key things I noted here was that the effective percentage rate was higher on the new 30-year fixed than the 20, but both options are lower than where he's currently at, effectively. Okay. So furthermore, I came down in the transaction cost section, let him know that basically for either loan, the closing costs and prepaids were going to be relatively the same. Explained that situation to him as well. And then we also went through the fact that the 30-year fixed versus the 20-year fixed would have a higher payment than his current payment. In fact, it'd be, the 20-year fixed would be $91 worse than what he was doing. It was great because he commented there and he let me know that he was planning on applying not just those extra dollars, but he also had another $500 budgeted to pay towards the mortgage, as he could probably pay it off in 15 years.
So he had a goal here coming into this of figuring out what's the most efficient way for him to pay off this mortgage and how quickly can he pay it off. And he had an extra $500 a month to put towards that.
Yep, and as an advisor, someone who's trying to help him improve his retirement, a bell's going off in my head as that's another place or another set of funds that we can apply towards savings.
Awesome.
So, and I'll get to that when we get to the Repay tab, but kind of simplify things. I ran through all the differences between the many columns and what things were good and what things were bad. We looked at the payment comparison over 30 years and didn't worry about any equity because that's all the same over the long haul. But we realized, and he realized, that he was going to pay save $19,000 versus saving $67,000. But even with that considered, the fact that he would be able to save the cash flow, and we always use a conservative rate of 4.5%, that he would be significantly better with the 30-year mortgage over the long haul than the 20-year. That didn't really satisfy his pay it off early goal, which he let me know he had.
So I want to point one thing out here on the screen, if I can. So when you look at just the payment difference over that time period, if you'll scroll back down, the on the payments themselves, the software is saying, hey, over this 30-year period, with the 20-year mortgage, you'll make $67,558 in fewer payments because you're only going to have to pay for 20 years, and on the 30-year, you're going to pay about $19,663. Now that's comparing that to his current mortgage. So in either two situations, he's paying less, but from a pure payment standpoint, over 30 years, his payment is less on the 20 than the 30. But that doesn't factor in the payment savings, which is we noted he was going to pay more on the 20 than the 30. So when you show that savings comparison down there at the bottom, it's now saying if you took that savings difference over 30 years at a 4.5% growth rate, then actually you are much better off going with the 30 than the 20 because you're going to save $43,000 versus $30,000 over that time period, or an average of $120 a month in savings versus an average of $84. What's nice is either scenario is better than what he's doing today, but as you said, the 30-year is giving him more net monthly disposable cash flow over that time period and more overall savings, which would be counterintuitive for a lot of people.
One of the things that's exactly right, Todd. One of the other things that I make sure that my mortgage person points out is the fact that he is better off in both scenarios, even with closing costs included.
Yep. That's great. And then you go to the Repay tab, and then you said he wasn't totally satisfied because his goal was to pay this off as quickly as possible.
That's correct. So we moved on to the Repay tab, and I always start out with, let's look at your current situation, what you're doing right now, graphically. And assuming you keep doing what you're doing, your current loan would be paid off in 14 years, 11 months. Now, that's assuming that you're taking the $500 additional each month that you mentioned earlier, and you're prepaying it to the mortgage.
So if he's
this will get you your payoff of 15 years.
So if he starts right now, just keeps his old mortgage and throws $500 a month at it, he's already going to be debt free in 14 years, 11 months. He can do that without closing costs, without anything.
That's correct. Yep, that's exactly what we pointed out. So he thought that was interesting, but more importantly, he was kind of excited to see what our proposed plan would look like. So we rolled out our proposed plan, which we have not just the $500 that he was talking about, we also have the $108 a month payment savings after taxes by doing the refinance, and we take that entire $608 and prepay the mortgage, and lo and behold, our payoff is in 10 years and 3 months.
Wow.
So he really liked that.
So you're saying apples to apples, with the same $500 a month, your new strategy here can put him debt free in 10 years, 3 months versus 14 years. So you're knocking 3-4 years off his mortgage.
Yep.
Cool.
I think we have a client at that point.
Yep.
But it gets better. Because where I come in is I asked him very simply, what if you had the option to pay this loan off sooner and improve your liquidity position? Notice his old situation, the green line is flat or zero through the 15 years. He has no liquidity. And then in his new position, same situation. It's sure he gets some liquidity a little earlier on in year 10, in the middle of year 10, but over the next 10 years, he has no access to any of this money. Well, not easy access anyways. Mm-hmm. So I proposed, what if instead of sending the $608 over to the bank, they're not going to pay you interest on that money, and they're certainly not going to make it easy for you to access should a problem arise or an opportunity. What if, instead of sending that to the bank, we take the $608 a month and we save it in an account that we own and control? Assuming a 4.5% interest rate, we cut his payoff or debt-free time down to 9 years and 10 months, and we've increased his liquidity along the way.
So you're still giving him what he wanted. Now you've taken him under 10 years to be debt free at his option, and you're using a 4.5% rate, which is very conservative. So you're helping him increase his liquidity. You're giving him his debt free exit if that's what he wants, and all you're doing is showing him how just a simple shift in that cash flow and how that cash flow gets allocated can help him accomplish multiple goals. And how does that help you, and how does that help the lender that you're working with?
Well, you nailed it right on the head. The client at this point was pretty ecstatic. He had no reason to shop around or look for lower rates because he realized a couple things. One, rate didn't really have much of an impact to this situation. It was all about the cash flow and where it was going. So he was very excited and extremely satisfied. At this point, the loan, the refinance, was sold. So in terms of how it benefited my mortgage referral partner is I was able to transfer this plan right back to them, and they were able to just do paperwork from that point. There's no more selling. It's done.
Great.
For me, it was great because I earned him as a client, and I earned $608 a month under my management now.
That's fantastic. And what's interesting about this is you could say, wow, is this a rare situation for you? But when we talked at the conference, what you were telling me is that you're doing this every day.
Yeah, we probably see an opportunity for what I would call a term refinance, whether it's from a 30 to a new 30 instead of going 15-year or 20, or a client who is already in a 15-year or 20, a short-term mortgage, and we're refinancing them back to a 30-year. We probably see one or two of those a week.
And those really add up at that level.
Absolutely.
And you're not focused on cashing out and trying to take the equity. You're simply showing them how to utilize their cash flow in the most efficient way possible.
That's correct. Our rule here is cash flow, not cash out.
Love it. Now, so how does this help you with the value of your advice? You commented one time that you can help everybody using this tool, including those that can't refinance. Can you talk about how, if a client comes in and they can't refinance today, how you might still work with them?
Yeah, I mean, Todd, that's a great question. Before we had this tool, I don't do lifestyle coaching. I don't teach people how to cut coupons or manage their budget. we primarily work with folks who already have a positive cash flow and are debt free. But every once in a while, we get a referral or some new clients that come through the doors, and they have credit card debt or auto debt or a bunch of non-tax deductible debt, and they need help dealing with it. Before that, we would basically say, sorry, that's just not our forte, can't help you. Here's some suggestions of people to talk to. But now we can actually load up their liabilities and give them a pay down plan. So what's exciting about that is the obvious. Obviously, we check up with them every 6 months or so, make sure they're on their plan, and eventually we may earn their business as clients later on. But what we found is what happens is when we give them something, at least we're giving them an answer. Not only are we keeping them in our reach, but we're also gaining a ton of referrals of the clients that are ready to save or plan for their retirement.
That's great. So you've got the ability to help just about everybody and build a client for life that's going to come back and see you when they need you.
Yep. I'll tell you this, regardless of whether there's a mortgage opportunity or not, every one of our clients, they receive a binder from us with plenty of material and reports and analysis, and within every single one of those binders is a borrow smart, repay smart report.
Well, I know just from the conversation we had, we could probably talk for an hour about some of the strategies that you share with me that you're using, and maybe we can do a more advanced call in the future. And you had mentioned that you found that it was hard to imagine not having this tool as a financial advisor and as a loan officer. Maybe we can kind of close with that. I mean, I know I'm kind of throwing you a soft pitch here, but you've shared it with people before, and you mentioned that they hadn't even taken the time to look at it. Why do you think this is a valuable tool for financial advisors and lenders to have and use?
Well, that is a great question, Todd, and I'm glad you asked it. Coming from the mortgage business, I was involved in kind of almost every aspect. A wholesaler, a retailer. I actually had my own warehouse line, and we funded and underwrote loans ourselves. So I've been in the mortgage business in all aspects, and I can tell you this: from each one of those aspects, wholesale, retail, and banker, I really wish we would have had this tool. Either for the loan officers that were working for me, loan officers that I was trying to sell my bank to or our funds to, or in terms of owning a retail shop, we would have lost less customers and we would have made more fees with this tool.
Well, that's our goal. People say, well, what is this tool? I'm like, it is the ultimate pre-GFE sales tool. Everything else is paperwork. If you can go through and tell a story, show the client here the numbers and how they work, you've got an opportunity to sell the client and then go through and do the paperwork. If you don't clearly sell the client on what it is that's good for them in the beginning, you end up selling over 30 to 45 days. You're having to constantly resell because they're never totally sure. And your client here was totally clear in this presentation, this is what I want. I want the option to be debt-free in less than 10 years using only my current cash flow and the $500 a month that I've earmarked towards this. Then it's just paperwork. It's just now I got to fill out the loan docs. I got to fill out the investment applications and stuff. But you're not having to constantly resell the client again and again because it's so clear what they're doing. And that's what we set out to do here. And we really appreciate you as a customer and also again the value of your advice, because that's clearly why people are coming to see you in this process.
That's right, Todd.
All right. Well, thanks, Jeff, so much for your time. I'm sure everyone will enjoy your insight, and just let us know how we can make it better.
Glad I could be of use, and I hope everyone will use this tool to tell the truth. That's what it's all about.
Thanks, Jeff.
Take care.